The Seahawks defense has had a rough start to begin this year. Can't stop the run, struggling against the short and intermediate passing attacks. But then we're also not able to stop the deep stuff either, are we? We're not getting any kind of consistent turnovers. And the pass rush just can't generate any kind of consistent pressure. But other than that, things are amazing. Now, many are bandying about reasons as to why this is the case. Some say it's the fact that we have employed a youth movement on that side of the ball, and you're just seeing green players trying to find their sea legs. Others will tell you, no, it's not that. It's the fact that they installed a new defensive scheme this offseason, and they're merely ironing out the kinks of that new scheme. Well, on this episode of the Hawks Nest, we're going to dive into the tape and look at the actual reasons this defense is struggling in the early parts of this year. For though it is a sample size, there are some concerns here with this particular brand of defense they're attempting to play. Here is where we begin, and this is where also a large portion of the blame deserves to be placed. Let me first quickly take you back to this prior offseason. Coach Carroll spoke at the combine of an internal arrogance that had caused them to be resistant to change on the defensive side of the ball for years. He fired his defensive coordinator and hired a new one that promised a more pressure-based approach. Carroll also hired former Bears defensive coordinator Sean Desai, after much wooing, to help them adapt to the cover two principles they seemingly wish to utilize. The Vic Fangio cover two shell is a 3-4 base defense. And yet, this is the front that you see before you that the Seahawks have run a vast majority of the time this season. They've taken the inside of the 4-3 defense and combined it with the outside of the 3-4. This Frankenstein creation can't even get up off the doctor's table. Just cadaver body parts strewn together. First, notice how far a distance apart there is between the outside linebackers and defensive tackles. Where normally you have a defensive end shaded next to the defensive tackles, now they're both on an island. It provides easy execution for the guard and center to get their quick double team block at the point of attack on Miles Adams. The right guard knows Darryl Johnson's not crashing inside from his wide 9 alignment because he first has edge setting responsibilities. Seahawks read and react with their linebackers, so the offense knows as well the middle linebackers aren't going to shoot any gaps either. If we split the field in half, the Seahawks have 3 defenders on the right side, 4 on the left. The Falcons on the left side have 4 men, plus the uncovered center and Patterson in the backfield. 6 against 4 usually doesn't turn out too well in the NFL. Post-snap, the right guard and center easily secure the double team on Adams. The center peels off and has a clear path to Jordan Brooks at the second level and gets him blocked up with ease. Johnson is pushed out of the play by a tight end. Brian Monet provides a heroic effort, tracking down the ball carrier and limiting the damage, but the point still stands. Too many blockers, too few defenders. All started by a wonky-ass 4-man front that left the front and back door wide open. Next up, Darrell Taylor. And I'm going to warn you, I'm about to rip Taylor just a little bit, so let's see a couple of good plays here where it's going right for him before I have to show you the bad. First, he shows a keen ability that has flashed before, where with first-step quickness, he can avoid initial contact at the line of scrimmage. It's key because we're going to see what happens soon when Taylor is contacted at the line of scrimmage. He gets inside the tight end fast and is much too quick to the ball carrier before the pulling guard can even get his hands on him. Next play, first sack of the year this past week. Nothing technically brilliant here, just Taylor again flashing first step quickness and bend. He first again avoids contact at the line of scrimmage and gets past that first blocker in a flash, and then he whips out the ghost move, ducking underneath the tackle's block to then flatten his route to the quarterback for a strip sack. 2 great plays, and he's had a couple more. However, there is far too many bad plays in between where he gets his face straight melted. Taylor's play strength has also been a particular problem early on in this season. As an outside linebacker in this defense, as I spoke about earlier, you need to set the edge first and foremost. And you can see teams time and again attacking to his side of the field, understanding that he is struggling in that component of his game. Here you have a tight end easily pushing him out wide. There is a little bit of a help here from the buddy coming in and giving him a little shot to the ribs here a little bit later on in this play. But nonetheless, he is already on skates prior to that second guy arriving. In fact, the guy barely has to pop him because he recognizes the fact that he has been fully blocked and stretched out of the play, which opens things then up inside. Here we have another play where Darrell Taylor is uncovered, and this is one of those few times the Seahawks were employing an actual true 3-4 defense. He's got some time to assess this play and figure out what's going on. What happens is the center pulls back across the formation to take on Taylor heads up. Now, Taylor's responsibility on this play again is going to be to take care of his outside left shoulder in setting the edge. What I mean by that is after Cordell Patterson gets that handoff, Taylor has to keep at the forefront of his mind that I have got to not let Patterson get past my left shoulder. He cannot get to the outside. I have to force him back into the inside. And there's moments in this play as I play in slow motion where it looks like that center has the block on him and that Patterson has kind of a two-way situation. He can go either way and there seemingly is a hole there, but there's not a hole because Jordan Brooks over the top is going to clean things up if Patterson cuts it back up inside. But Taylor has to first force him to then cut it back up inside, which he does not do, and it allows it to be about a 6-yard gain. Once again, Darrell Taylor matched up with the tight end one-on-one, and once again, the tight end gives him the business, easily moving him around the football field with Darrell Taylor ending the play on his back. I certainly like the effort from him and what he's trying to do in that respect of things on this play, but it's again another example of a little bit of a lack of play strength showing up early on in this season. In the 2021 draft, Kyle Pitts was the 4th overall selected player. He was looked at as this modernized outside guy that you would love to have, somewhere between a tight end and a wide receiver. Some viewed him as specifically just a wide receiver, but nobody really looked at him as much of a blocker. Certainly not a guy that you were going to ask to do a lot of the traditional blocking stuff you often ask tight ends to do. Yet here we have a play, mano a mano, Darrell Taylor against Pitts, where Pitts easily blows Taylor out of the hole, and it ends up with Taylor on his back once again via a tight end. Teams around the league are recognizing that Darrell Taylor is indeed a liability in the running game, and they are attacking him in a variety of different ways. There is no more glaring example of this than this San Francisco 49er game in this particular play. The Niners are going to run a fly sweep to the weak side of the formation, or Darrell Taylor's side of the field. He is going to be left unblocked. What's odd about this is that teams would normally run this fly sweep away from the unblocked defender. The fact that the 49ers have the cojones to do this against Taylor here shows that they have no fear of him as a run defender. Shows that they really truly believe that Deebo Samuel is going to be able to easily break this tackle. And indeed, Deebo Samuel does so in a phone booth here against Darrell Taylor and then goes on to a very big play, maybe one of the biggest plays in this particular game. Deebo Samuel is a phenomenal player. This is his bread and butter. He causes a lot of defenders to look silly in the open field. Nonetheless, as I said earlier, we are seeing these kind of misses far too often from Darrell Taylor. This is more of the same of what I was just talking about. This is actually a play where Taylor is going to take on the tight end and do a good job of keeping his feet moving, keeping his eyes up, and recognizing where the play is going to go. But he is left in a situation at one given point on this play where he is in the open field, one-on-one with the running back who is not up to full speed, and he completely just whiffs the tackle. Again, I love the effort here from Taylor, keeping his feet moving, keeping his eyes alive, but you've got to make this tackle in the open field. Jordan Brooks. He's been another defender that has struggled mightily early on this season in a variety of different ways. But one of the biggest issues with him is in coverage, specifically zone coverage. Now, this is nothing new under the sun. Jordan gave up over 900 yards receiving last year, which is very hard for a linebacker to do, and led the NFL for linebackers in yards given up in coverage. This also goes back to his college days where he did struggle in zone coverage at that time. If you all remember, back in his senior year, he had 88 snaps in coverage and not one pass defensed. They tried to tell us at that time it was because he was just playing a quarterback spy role. And at that time, I shot that down and continue to do so. It is not that. It is that he just struggles in zone coverage. This is a little bit surprising to me, as now as we get into the third year of his career, I'd expect this to maybe start to a little bit go forward a little bit. We see a little bit of better recognition skills here. But time and time again, it's sort of the same story here with Jordan Brooks, which is that he wants to be a run defender. That is what he wants to do and only what he really wants to do. So whenever there is an offense running play action, you can count, and those offenses can count on Jordan Brooks taking a couple of false steps forward as he does here on this play. Those couple of false steps are taken forward, and then he does not get the depth to get back into his zone drops, and big plays occur then over the top, despite the fact Seattle runs a predominant amount of soft zone coverage. It's very well put together by Shanahan here. He gets the wide receiver to run the corner off. He keeps a running back out in the flat to draw in Cody Barton. But then you have Jordan Brooks taking those couple of steps forward and the tight end left open on an out route 15 yards up the football field. Another play very similar to the last one from the opening game of the season. Jordan, again, you can see him locked in there on Javonte Williams in the backfield. The problem here is he's got a responsibility in coverage to 83, the tight end there on the left side of his shoulder. So he cannot take the couple of steps falsely in if that tight end is going to run any kind of go route or any kind of route with any sort of depth, because Brooks is going to be behind. But instead, that is just what you are going to see. Brooks takes his couple of false steps forward. Russell Wilson then attacks him up over the top. Can't help but believe that definitely this was something Russell Wilson was going to intend to do coming into this game, as he would be very well aware of the shortcomings for Brooks when it comes to zone coverage. On a day where the San Francisco offense had their way with the Seattle Seahawks defense, this was one of the more frustrating plays for me on the day. Well, you'll notice first out the gate is the San Francisco 49ers are in 21 personnel. That's two backs, even though Kyle Juszczyk is aligned out as a tight end. And then you'll see that there's two wide receivers at the top of the screen. Seahawks have countered this with a 3-4 front, one of those rare times they're running the 3-4 front. But what really stands out pre-snap as you look at this is that you have two receivers at the top of the screen, but we have Tariq Woolen at the bottom of the screen with no receiver to cover up whatsoever. Now, what this is going to leave then is your strong safety Josh Jones in a bit of a pickle, because Jones is now going to have to come up 11 yards post-snap and try to cover Brandon Ayuk. It's already a big task to ask a strong safety to try to man up one-on-one against a wide receiver, when you're also then going to give that wide receiver some 11 yards of space as sort of a head start on the situation. That doesn't help either. Keep in mind as well, Jones has got to be aware about in-cutting routes and, God forbid, Brandon Ayuk taking this over the top. So he can't necessarily commit in a tight coverage here and really try to play him up. This leaves this play wide open for an out route once the receiver at the top of the screen runs Michael Jackson out of the play. You want your coaching staff to put your players in a position to succeed. You want them to have schematic wrinkles that will give the players little bits of advantages pre and post snap. The Seahawks instead are doing a little bit too often the opposite as far as their coaching staff is concerned, as they're putting their players, as they did here with Josh, in a position to fail. All right, let's get to potential fixes. And quite frankly, I don't have a lot of them. There's not a one-fit-all magic solution that we can apply here. There are not players sitting on the bench that will be vast, far superior upgrades versus what we have on the field as it currently stands right now. There are very little adjustments that we can really truly make. For instance, you look at the middle linebacker position, you're stuck with Cody Barton and Jordan Brooks this year. There's not a clear-cut trade that you can go out there and make in the NFL to help that unit out. There's not a guy on the street that you can go out there and sign who's going to be an upgrade in any way over what these guys are providing you. So you've just got to hope that they're going to improve with time. There are a couple of things that they can apply to this situation. And first and foremost, I would do away with these weird four-man fronts and go back to more of their traditional four-man fronts that we've seen throughout the time of Carroll here. That 4-3 under defense with that Sam linebacker up on the line of scrimmage. An opportunity to get Darrell Taylor back out there, and instead of him being on an island now, he'll have a little bit of help around him. Or you can put Boye Mafe out there, which is going to be my next suggestion. But nonetheless, you go more to those traditional four-man fronts. And what I think this would allow you to do is get back to stopping the run. No matter really how bad Carroll's defenses have been over the last couple of years when they've had their really rough moments, They've always been able to, at least consistently throughout that time, stop the run. And I think going back to that four-man front with the Sam linebacker as a de facto fifth defensive lineman in those situations, I think that would aid them to be able to at least find something on this defense that they can hang their hat on. As I spoke about at the top, there's nothing they're doing really good right now. And I think they've got to find something that they can lean back onto and then build upon that. Now, as far as players on the field go and swapping this guy out for that guy and this guy being an upgrade for this guy, there is really not a lot of those turns. I just spoke about the situation with the linebackers, and that's very much the same as you look at the defensive line, for instance, that has been underperforming up until this point. But the one position and the one player that stands out to me that you can swap out would be Darrell Taylor. And I think Boye Mafe has provided you an upgrade if you want to go that route. And it does seem to be in Carroll's comments that he is indicating Mafe is going to get more snaps, which is encouraging to hear that from Carroll as opposed to just running Taylor out all season for the hell of it, because Mafe has been superior to Taylor, even in those short stints of him out on the football field. You saw in this Falcons game, on this particular play I'm going to show you, him tracking a play backside, getting to the ball carrier, and then making the tackle. Something I showed you on the tape that Darrell Taylor has struggled with. Then I've got a couple of other clips I'm going to show you from that Falcon game and the 49er game where you're going to see Boye setting the edge first and then getting off the block and then actually making the tackle as well. Something that we've also seen Darrell Taylor struggle with. This is really the only position I can see you swapping out to get potentially an upgrade there, but I do think Boye Mafe gives you an upgrade as that run defender. And as I said, if I'm looking at a way that this team can adjust itself right now feasibly, not in some pie in the sky kind of way, it's in trying to get back towards stopping the run first and foremost. It's far too soon to make any final determinations about the tape in this young season, but there are some concerns here that have been carrying forward for the past couple of years, not just this season. And while there are those folks that talk about the green players on the outside that are just going to take their time to mature a little bit, I can't as much fall into believing that that's the case with this particular defense early on. Some of the best performers on this defense have been your rookies. Mafe is outplaying Darrell Taylor right now. Tariq Woolen has been very solid on the outside. In fact, both of those two defensive players I just talked about were both the top-rated defensive players by PFF through the first 2 weeks of the season. So it's not really been as much about your young guys. Even Michael Jackson, who's a relatively young guy as well, is holding up okay out there. Pitts gave it to him this last week a little bit, but he's been fine. It's been really the veteran players giving you problems, or those guys that have been in the league for a couple of years who should actually be moving right into the primes of their career. So the young guy argument doesn't really hold much water. And as far as it being about the new scheme, I would push back a little bit against that as well. You're not really running very much 3-4 defense here. You're running still 4-man fronts, and it's not getting it done. It's a bit of an awkward 4-man front versus what you've done in the past, which was more traditional in your looks there with that. But nonetheless, it's still a 4-man front, and it's not getting the job done up there as far as that goes. It's also not a big change from what you've done in the past, merely because you've moved the alignment of where those 4 guys are stacked. That's not a change of scheme to me. So once again, an argument that just doesn't hold a whole lot of water for me here. If they were doing more of the 3-4 looks and getting gashed in that respect of things, I could put a little bit more credence into it if that was the case. But that is not the case. It is, again, a lot more of the old here. 4-man fronts, soft zone defense on the back end, which has not been a recent recipe for success for this football team. We'll see what Coach Carroll can do as far as an adjustment. We'll see what he can do as far as reaching in that old bag of tricks that he has. Certainly the last couple of years, you started out historically at bad paces as far as defensively goes the last 2 seasons and found a way to turn it around as the year went on, found a way to get better as the year went along. That's why I say it is far too soon to make any kind of final determinations, but let's also not lie about what we're seeing here on the tape. I'm hopeful that Carroll can improve it. Let's see if he can improve it. Please, God, improve it. Please, God. Thank you for watching. My name is Brandon Kane. This is the Hawks Nest. Hit that like button. Please do subscribe. But beyond all that, don't you ever forget, go Hawks.